Hello everyone, Dorvald here with another story from the good old days. So this particular story is about one of my rattan weapons in the SCA. For those of you who are not familiar with the SCA, Society for Creative Anachronism, when we fight in our medieval armor, we're not using real steel weapons. We're using weapons that are made out of rattan, which is kind of like a solid bamboo. It looks like bamboo on the outside, but inside it's solid with a bunch of fibers that run through it. So we use rattan for a couple of different reasons, but two of the most important ones in a way deal with safety. When rattan dies or breaks, it does one of two things. The first, and by far the most common, is when it does something that we call brooming out. And that's where all of those fibers inside have broken down and split apart, so it looks like the bottom end of a broom. The second is that if it breaks, if it snaps off clean. It doesn't snap off the jagged edges like a lot of regular wood does, and therefore leave a sharp edge or a pointed end to it that can then injure somebody severely. So that's just a couple of the reasons that we use rattan. Now, this particular weapon of mine earned a name. Now, we all know from history and mythology that naming weapons, especially swords, was quite common. Most folks in the SCA don't bother because our swords and weapons and such don't last all that long, especially for some people. Some people can go through swords as fast as most people go through a toothpick. They're lucky if they can actually get the rattan weapon to last more than a couple of months, depending on how often they fight and the style they fight in. I don't know what it is, but me, I don't tend to go through my weapons all that often, and that's even back when I was fighting very, very regular. You know, back when my body actually worked. It was normal for me to go to 2 fighter practices a week. So that's an awful lot of time and stress and strain on my weapons, and yet still, I didn't manage to go through my weapons as often as a lot of other people did. My construction techniques were slightly different than most, and maybe that contributed to it. But at any rate, I do name my weapons on occasion if, number one, they are exceptionally well balanced and handle very, very well. We all try to make weapons that suit our fighting style, but sometimes you just hit it exactly right, just dead on perfect, and that particular weapon becomes special to you and you give it a name. Other times it's because they've done something significant or noteworthy in regards to a battle, whether it's a battle with an individual person or if it's a battle like a war going on with lots of people. So this particular sword, though, was a bastard sword or a hand-and-a-half sword meant to be used either one or two-handed, and its name was Dentus Maximus, and it earned that name. So this story involves how it earned that name and how it met its end. So I made this sword, and I had used it a number of times. As far as bastard swords go, it wasn't exceptionally long because I really like to adhere to that idea that a hand-and-a-half sword is meant to be balanced enough that it can be used one-handed as well as two-handed. So the overall length of this sword was only about 42 to 45 inches. It had a 16-inch grip, which is actually fairly long, but it was long enough that I could get both hands on it and have a little bit of space in between my hands so that I could use the levering action while swinging it to generate power. So it was very well balanced. I really liked it a great deal. I was getting really used to it. And I went down to a practice in Berkeley, California, known as BART practice. And the reason we called it BART practice is that it took place underneath the elevated tracks of the Bay Area Rapid Transit trains down in Berkeley at the main Berkeley station, hence BART practice. It was held every Tuesday and Thursday night down there, so I usually went on Thursdays. So this particular night, I get down there, I decide I'm going to come out with my bastard sword, and one of my friends, Sir Farron of Ravburg, was there, and he said, you know, I have been trying to learn to do bastard sword, and I know that you're really good at it. How about we go a few rounds, and then you maybe give me some pointers? And I'm like, I'm all for it, sure, happy to help. So he borrows a bastard sword. He didn't have one of his own. I brought mine out, and the swords were relatively equally matched in terms of length, so neither one of us was getting an advantage on reach. And we start to fight. So I throw just one of my standard fakes, and I mean, it's not much of a fake. Its intention is to draw a reaction from my opponent, and basically what I do is I start by going up really quickly as if I'm going to go for a headshot. So I go up really quickly with the point coming out towards them to draw a response, and then I immediately crank my arms like this and come up low across the chest and belly. The idea being that up, draw the attack, crank it down, and now I'm still in a position where I can block if they throw anything at me. And then I can also follow it up with a return strike as I back out. So this is one of my absolutely favorite combinations to use with Bastard Sword. It doesn't work as well with some other weapons, and it doesn't work as well with a longer weapon, but it's perfect for a hand-and-a-half shot fake combination. So we square up, we say lay on, we start, and I go up. He responds, I go smack under and hit him right across the chest and belly, and go back to guard as he goes, good! So I got him. So he says, let's do that again. He said, I didn't quite see how that works, so I want to do it again. Alright, so we go in, up, stroke under, back on guard. Damn, I still couldn't quite catch that. One more time. Alright, go in, up, stroke, back on guard. And he goes, alright, we're going to need to work on that one. I'm going, actually, Farron, I think you need to look down. Sir Farron of Ravburg wore a steel chest plate, and it was articulated. It actually had these chevron-style plates that made up the upper part down to the belly. It went up this way, and they were articulated so we could move with him. And there were now 3 long dents right across the articulations of his chest plate. I didn't throw it hard. I didn't throw it with the intention of denting or damaging his gear. It was just the way that the shot came in, the angle, and the fact that this chest plate wasn't made up of very thick metal. It was only, I believe, 16 gauge. I could be off on that. If Farron hears this story, maybe he can verify what thickness that was. But I put 3 creases right across his articulation so it didn't articulate anymore. And therefore, it earned its name, Dentus Maximus. Now, Dentus Maximus lasted for actually a couple of years. It had a really, really good run. Then, the Barony of Vinhold was holding a tournament in Vallejo at a particular park that we liked to use there. Unfortunately, I'm having trouble remembering the name of that park right now, but all my friends from Vinhold and the Bay Area will remember this particular location. It was the Eucalyptus Grove Park in Vallejo that had the stream that ran through it. It had those great bridges. We actually held the Mists Games there a couple of years in a row, and it was a quest that I had drawn up that involved Norse mythology. I got a whole bunch of pictures of that particular event. You can find it on the West Kingdom History site, and it was Mist Games for 2 years. It was when Duke and Duchess Beckingham, Elena and Stephen, were the Prince and Princess of the Mists. So at any rate, we were having a tournament there at that park, and one part of the tournament involved a random drawing for your equipment. So we made a big pile out in the middle of the fighting area with all the weapons and shields that everybody had brought with them. Just tossed them all out there. And then we had an envelope, and in the envelope were written down all the different weapons and shields. So you would reach in, you would draw one out, and that would be what you had to carry out in your right hand, and you would reach in and pull out a second one to see what would be in your left. And you could end up with some really strange, weird combinations doing this. You know, one guy drew out 9-foot pike for his left hand and shield for his right. Now, the rules didn't say that you absolutely had to keep both things on you once the fight started. You could toss one or the other away and then just use what you got left. And I remember the guy that got pike and shield. And what he did is, as soon as they yelled lay on, he tossed the shield out in front of him, between him and his opponent, to slow his opponent down on trying to close with him, and then just went straight with pike. I don't remember if he got the guy with the pike or not. Pike, 9-foot spear, thrusting only, no cutting edges. Different parts of the SCA world, some places call it a pike, some places just call it a spear. At any rate, he just threw the shield out, made the guy slow down, have to go around it. He went at him with the spear pike. So Dentus Maximus ended up in the pile out there with all the rest of the gear. And then Sir Phelan Silverhawk drew Bastard Sword, and I don't remember what else he drew. But he grabbed Dentus Maximus. And then once they yelled lay on, he threw away whatever the other weapon he had was and just went with Dentus Maximus. Now, I don't remember who he was fighting. Alright? But during the course of the fight, Phelan manages to hit the other guy in the leg. And in SCA combat, you would drop to your knees to signify the loss of mobility with the injured leg. And then as Phelan gets in tight on him, he throws a shot up, sweep, over, down like this, and he hit the guy square in the head. Just a nice, sharp, clean smack. And as he hit, the last 8 inches of Dentus Maximus just sheared off right through the rattan, right through all of the tape that was on it, the strapping tape, the duct tape. All of it died all at the same time. And that last 8 inches of Dentus Maximus went off into the sunset. It died a glorious, spectacular death. And Phelan came off, and he was just so apologetic of having broken it. And I'm like, don't worry about it. I mean, come on. It's a couple of years old. The rattan was bound to give out any time now. Don't worry about it. That was absolutely spectacular. If it's gonna go out, that's the way that it should go. So that's the story of Dentus Maximus, how it got its name, and how it met its end. Yeah, sure, you betcha.